Good morning, everybody. Ben Rasa, Matt Gajewski here for Awesemo.com, and we are ready. CFB live before lock, week one, a full slate of games. Matt, we're kind of we shake off the rust last week. We had 5 games. We had a couple 7-game slates Thursday and Friday, but this is the real thing. This is the official kickoff of college football.
Yeah, man, a lot of good games today. I'm pumped for it.
Me too, no doubt about it. We've got some big-time national championship caliber games. We've got other games where the spread is 30 or more points, a little everything in between, but I want to get started with our friends at PrizePicks. We spent a lot of time yesterday digging into some of the numbers you could take advantage over there. If you haven't gone over, they are offering daily prop-based fantasy contests, and they have the largest group of college football props in the entire DFS industry. They have a special promo for the Georgia-Clemson game this weekend. It's as lock of locks that you're going to find. Use the promo code AwesemoCFB. Place any entry on that Georgia versus Clemson game, and if 1 point is scored, you get $50 free. We talked yesterday. I just want to throw this out there. My favorite play over there today is Tank Bigsby, the running back from Auburn, to score more than 1 touchdown. I think that is a prop you can take advantage of. They should destroy Akron. Is there anything that stood out for you before we dive into this slate of games?
Yeah, I've since we started doing this promo, I've actually been playing a lot more on PrizePicks. I already took a couple today.
Look at that.
I like the over on Jamison Williams for Alabama. He's projected pretty low at 52.5 receiving yards. I like the over on Max Johnson, LSU quarterback, only 235.5 yards. They throw the ball incessantly, really up-tempo offense with LSU. Maryland, Tayon Fleet-Davis against West Virginia, only 52.5 yards. And one that really stood out to me was Jaquavius Marks, the receiving back for Mississippi State. They're going to have probably under 10 rush attempts all game. He splits time 50-50 in the backfield, and he's projected for 47.5 rushing yards. Love the under there.
A lot to take advantage over there. We're going to be talking about them throughout the show. And chat, I see you. I see all of you. Good discussion in there already. What's up, everybody? Hit that like button for us. Let's get that out of the way, and let's dive into it. Some hot takes ready. Clemson could play their second string and beat Georgia. I hope that's true. I don't think it is, though. But we start. We get 13 of these bad boys. Stanford plus 3.5 at Kansas State. Little Apple, not really, because it's a weird game here. Interconference. 2 pretty ugly teams. We've talked a lot in the past about Kansas State, how methodical they are. But let's start with Stanford. What do you see out of this team? It's a competitive spread, but in a 13-game slate, is this one to target?
Kind of not at the pass. Not the quarterback position for Stanford. They're going to run 2 guys. Tanner McKee and Jack West are going to split time. The main guy I'm interested in is their running back, Austin Jones, who projects fairly well. It's mainly because he's such an active receiver. He handled just absurd volume in the receiving game last year. 21 passes caught in only 6 games. And then they have some cheap options at receiver, Bryson Tremaine, Elijah Higgins. I think you could look to them, but the implied team total is pretty low. Outside of one-offs, I'm not sure you want to get to any Stanford. And overall, the game is just really low in the total. Kansas is going to play super slow, super run heavy. They kind of sap all the juice out of their opponents. So Stanford's not a huge target for me.
No, you did mention Austin Jones, though. We have him projected as one of the highest owned players on the slate. And I get it. On the other side, though, a guy that was a DFS darling for part of the year, Deuce Vaughn. He is the running back for Kansas State. Is he in play for you, or is there another spot you want to go with the Wildcats?
Deuce Vaughn is okay. He lived off of efficiency last year. For reference, he's 5'6", 170 pounds. So he doesn't handle the 3-down workload. He'll get spelled at times. He does have a 3-down skill set, but he just can't play every single down because he's not big enough. So they'll spell him with Joe Irving at times. So with Vaughn, you already are battling really slow gameplay. They are run heavy, so that works in his favor. He's a decent pass catcher, but then he can't play all 3 downs. So does Vaughn get it done with efficiency on a small sample? I think he's a middling play, fairly appropriate in price. Skylar Thompson's kind of the same. Again, they're not going to have a lot of pass volume, so he has to get it done on the ground with his dual threat ability, which is middling. And because they're so run heavy and so slow, the receivers are just flat out not in play.
Yeah, that's been a theme. I mean, Kansas State, their skill position players really suffer from the offense. In a game like this, it's very reasonable they won't be trailing where they have to abandon that. It's a close competitive game. Didn't bet it, won't bet it. I'm going to pretend this game doesn't exist. Did you bet anything from this spot?
No.
Okay. I was just making sure. We had a good, how about them Spartans last night? I'm going to take my victory lap there. They absolutely dismantled Northwestern. Old Dominion confirmed bad, but win some, you lose some.
It's funny. You got me to bet that game in our Big Ten preview pod we did like way back at the end of July, and yes. I forgot I bet it.
Well, there you go. Yeah, betting you. One of the many reasons you should check that out. You and me giving betting picks there. And we're going to get to the betting markets here. Don't you worry. But let's go to the next game. We'll keep it moving. Tulane, 31.5-point underdog at Oklahoma. They will paint the Tulane logo on the field. Not sure that's going to be enough for this team. I like this game. I bet this game early. My game bet was voided because they changed venues because of the hurricane. It's going to be a tough spot for Tulane. You know they're going to be throwing. You know they're going to be behind. Can they do anything against this Oklahoma defense?
Probably not. Their quarterback, Michael Pratt's not very efficient. He's somewhat mobile, which is pretty good here, but they are implied for not even 20 points. It's just a super low total. Pratt's really hard to stack because they're going to run a receiver rotation where you see probably upwards of 5 guys on the field, led by Deuce Watts. But again, Deuce Watts finished as the team's leading receiver with just 512 yards. 50 yards per game is not going to cut it on a 13-game slate. And then they rotate in the backfield. They replaced Stephen Hutterson. Cameron Carroll's back, but then Tyjae Spears is back from an ACL tear, and they got a transfer in Devin Brumfield. So expecting upwards of 3 rushes in this game. Tulane's a straight X-out situation for me.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. As we mentioned, Oklahoma is a team I think is very, very live to win it all. Certainly today they're going to have plenty of offense, and this is the classic situation. You've got guys like Spencer Rattler and Mims and the other guys in terms of the outside skill position players. Is it just an aggressive stack because we might not see them in the third and fourth quarter? Or do you think there's enough volume early that they can get there on efficiency?
You and I like to talk about this a lot with these teams implied for a ton of points, especially in non-competitive games. In non-competitive games, you want to take your shots, but you want to do it situationally because you're likely seeing limited playing time. But on the way there, there's a very good chance that one or maybe 2 of these players are the reason they get to that immense spread. So I like taking shots with players like Kennedy Brooks or Eric Gray in these games where you have massive implied team totals in a wide spread north of 30 points. Teams like to lean on the run, and we've seen that a lot in games so far this year. Colorado was a great example last night with Jarek Broussard. Really took the arrow to the ball with Brendan Lewis. Now, Rattler is another kind of guy. You could use him in stacked because his receivers are fairly cheap. And if Rattler's the guy that gets the job done and gets Oklahoma to this 31-point spread, you just want to take shots. But because of the spread, it's not one I would load up on. Rattler's going to throw a lot to Mims, their second-year stud. He will benefit by Theo Wees not playing in this game. He's out a couple of weeks. That should also benefit Jaden Haselwood, who missed most of last year with injury, and Mike Woods, a transfer from Arkansas. Haselwood and Wood should play a lot, and they're really cheap. You also have like Drake Stoops is a guy that stepped up last year during injury. He's kind of like a part-time slot-only player, but he rotates in and on the field. You can take shots on any of these guys. Kennedy Brooks, Eric Gray, they're 2-man backfield, 2 studs there. Eric Gray, super efficient with Tennessee. He's going to play about half the time in the first half, combined with Kennedy Brooks, who beat out Trey Sermon for the starting job back in 2018, back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons for him. Take shots on all these guys. Just don't play a lot of them together is what I would say.
And you're comfortable, no run back for Tulane, right?
Absolutely. I will X out Tulane.
Okay. Yeah. Listen, Oklahoma is going to dominate. There's no doubt about it. You just need to run, efficiently with the touchdowns. There's going to be a lot of them up for grabs. So no problem with that. I want to bet the game. I'm so bitter about the number moving, basically a full touchdown. It's going to be a pass for me. I'm not laying 31.5.
Yeah. In the chat, they're talking about Stogner, their tight end. He's in play too.
You're not betting this?
No, I wish I had my old bet.
Yeah, me too. That would have been nice, but what are you going to do? I mean, it feels about right. Oklahoma hangs 50 and Tulane hangs anywhere from 14 to 20. So nothing crazy there. Let's keep it going. Western Michigan going to Michigan, 16.5. So the Wolverines are expected to get it done, 65.5-point total. Western Michigan's not an awful team, to be honest. They've got some things that maybe can cause some problems, but in a 13-game slate, obviously their team total isn't great. Do you expect them to be able to move the ball against Michigan?
It's really hard with these MAC schools. And we'll talk about a couple of them today. The MAC played, just the MAC last year outside of the bowl game. So how do these teams perform with a step up in competition? Michigan recruits at one of the highest levels in the country. So I'm somewhat interested in betting the spread in favor of Michigan. And a guy like Caleb Ellaby, who's not mobile, he's going to be going against like a significantly overmatched Michigan defensive line against the Western Michigan offensive line. He's going to have to get it done all through the air because he can't run. And with this 25 team total, I think there's just other places to look. They are not the pass heaviest team, and they also run a pretty slow offense, which I don't think helps him. If you're using anyone on Western Michigan, I think it's probably one of the receivers and a run back in like a contrarian Michigan stack situation. Sky Moore and Jalen Hall are the two I would look at. But even there, they're both pretty expensive. They're both north of 5K. So I think you can do better with your contrarian stacks today. The backfield, Ladarius Jefferson, former Michigan State player, he'll lead a three-man tandem consisting of Sean Tyler and Jackson Kincaid. Western's not a strong target for me unless you're just picking a run back in a Michigan stack.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I want to talk about the Michigan stack. I thought that Bowman would get the start. It looks like that is not the case. You've got Cade McNamara. Can't really, I don't know. He's not exactly mobile in my book. So if you do stack it up, are you looking to pair him with a couple of receivers, or are you more saying, you're going to run Hassan Haskins out there in terms of that and maybe just have a small correlation in this game?
Yeah, so Michigan implied for 42 points, massive favorite, but it's not a 31-point favorite. So bookmakers think it'll be somewhat competitive. I think that means you probably have some of these guys on the field longer than, say, in Oklahoma. Cade McNamara doesn't have a huge sample, but he was the better signal caller last year over Joe Milton. I don't know how much job security he has. This Michigan team hasn't committed to a quarterback recently. I think Cade McNamara probably plays the whole game, but Bowman is there if McNamara plays bad. However, like with a 42 total, you want to take shots on this team. So stacking McNamara makes some sense. Again, he's not very mobile, so you want him in stacks. Ronnie Bell is pretty expensive, but he'll lead the team in targets. From there, Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson are guys to look at. They also have a pretty good receiving tight end in Eric All. I think you could look to any of them. This Michigan offense, just at a glance, has a lot of like things you would like. Josh Gaddis is the OC. He's a former Alabama guy. He typically runs a little more up-tempo and pass heavy. We've seen that situationally from Michigan. So when they're up a lot in this game, I'm really curious to see how he calls plays. But like you mentioned, you can always take a shot on just Hassan Haskins if you think Michigan rolls them on the ground. He'll lead a committee featuring a little bit of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Corum is more of like a third down back, so Haskins should handle most of the early down work.
You mentioned you kind of lean Michigan here. It is inside 17. It's a pretty good number if you want to do it. You haven't bet it, but you might.
Yeah, I think I'm going to.
God, this is something that normally I would do. I can get down with a little Michigan bet. Is that what we're going to do here?
I'm taking him.
Okay.
I just put it in.
First bet of the day. We're going Wolverines. I'll probably jump on as well. I do think they look pretty good. Like I said, I wish it was Bowman, but McNamara could be fine. He's got weapons on the outside. I think that Haskins is going to have a day. I like them. Western Michigan's run defense is just bad. So
Western Michigan gave up a ton of points in all MAC play. So I think you want to take your shots with the Wolverines for sure on DFS.
Yeah, and that's the way to do it. I don't expect
them to be very owned either.
No, I mean, listen, 13 games. This is a little different. You're going to have even really popular plays. Some guys are going to get up there, but ownership will be dispersed just because of the multitude of options. We've got a lot of games.
This game is tied for the highest total on the board.
Yeah, that's a little surprising to me, to be honest. I think it's more a product of the slate, but this doesn't scream shootout by any stretch.
Right.
Yeah. You know what really doesn't scream shootout? Your boys. Penn State plus 5.5 going into Camp Randall. Take on Wisconsin. Sub 50 total, 49.5.
Dude, this game is projected for 2 more points scored than the Navy Marshall game.
Yeah, that's grounds for, I don't know what exactly you would be relegated to, but this is where relegation would come into play. I will say, Sean Clifford, have a day, man. He says he's very confident. Best quarterback in the country, feels like that. Good for him. Will Levis isn't hunting him down now. It's his job. He's going to have to play well today. He's got some things certainly to help him, in particular, Dotson on the outside. What do you expect from Penn State? It's not the easiest spot in a true road game to start the year, but do you think they can move the ball?
No, I don't think this is the spot to target them. I'm really interested in Penn State in different matchups. They changed OCs. They went to Yurcich from Texas, who was the 3rd fastest play caller in all of college football last year, except Wisconsin's the literal opposite. They're going to slow the game and be about as run heavy as a non-triple option team is going to be, really take the air out of Penn State. I think overall Clifford, because of his dual threat ability, is still in play, and he has good stacking options. Like Jahan Dotson's going to have a target share around like 25 to 30% on the season. He's a dynamic little slot type receiver. Parker Washington really emerged at the end of last year. He's 5K. I don't think you want to get to anybody else like Keandre Lambert-Smith and Brenton Strange, but I think stacks in this game will be really contrarian, and I like the dual threat for Clifford. He just doesn't project that well because the total is really low. So just you have to know that going in. He would have to outperform expectation, but the plays per game indicate that it's a possibility. I see some people talking about Clifford being trash. He actually performed pretty well last year, completed over 60% of his passes, 7.5 yards per attempt. Those are both above average. His main issue is turnovers. If he can cut those down and not turn the ball over, which, turnovers aren't necessarily a bad thing for DFS unless you're going to get benched, I think he's okay.
It was a weird situation for Penn State. They lost some, I don't even want to say fluky games, just extremely close games to start that year.
Dude, they outscored their opponents and they went under 500.
Yeah, it was a bizarre kind of year. They did right the ship late. They do get Noah Cain back in the backfield, but I assume you think that maybe that's going to be a crowded situation. They got transfers in from Baylor, and there were just other guys to begin with.
I think Noah Cain leads a committee that may have like upwards of 3 or 4 guys.
So yeah, that's a no-go. On the betting side of things, plus 5.5, I would take the points if I had to, but I don't know exactly what to do with this game.
I have a small play on Penn State. They recruit better than Wisconsin. I like their offense. And as we'll get to, this Wisconsin team has a lot of issues scoring.
It's going against the family. And
Leo Chenal is out for Wisconsin. He's like arguably their best defender.
So what do we make of this team? There was a moment there for about 10 minutes where Graham Mertz looked actually competent. And
against Illinois.
Yeah, against Illinois. He completed like 90% of his passes. And then for months afterwards, they couldn't score at all.
So he only played in a couple games, and that like 90% completion percentage dropped all the way to 61% by the end of the year. And he only averaged 6.4 yards per attempt, and he can't run.
So what do they do? Because, they run a funky offense. They got fullbacks. They don't know. There's kind of a shakeup in the backfield. Who's going to lead that? I mean, if they do win, even though it'll be methodical, who's going to produce for this Wisconsin team?
So it's not Mertz. It's not Danny Davis or Kendrick Pryor. They'll be the top 2 receivers, and they will have, in the past, they've had comparable target shares to Jake Ferguson. They'll all cannibalize each other. Going back to Wisconsin, the players we always want to target are in the backfield. Their offensive line struggled a lot last year, which was kind of uncharacteristic for them. And they had a 4-star recruit in Jalen Berger, who has now lost the job to Clemson transfer Chez Malusi. We haven't seen Malusi really. He just was the product of playing behind ETN. So it's nothing against him. He's just an unproven commodity, but his recruiting numbers are all good. He's a former 4-star. So, he has the makings of a productive back. We just haven't seen it yet. He was listed as the starter above Berger. So there's upside with him. This could be a committee, like a 50-50 timeshare. It could be Malusi getting the Jonathan Taylor role. We just don't know how much work he's going to get. For that reason, I'm going to take some shots on Malusi because of the high run rate Wisconsin has. It's not a great total, but Malusi has a chance to be one of the few like really cheap bell cows. Not really a cash play, but the upside keeps him viable in tournaments.
I assume this is a game you have no interest in stacking, maybe a one-off at best.
No stacks.
Okay. Shout out friend of the show and contributor here, Jordan Vanek. Drake Stoops out today, so that thins it a little.
Yeah, he's a rotational guy, so I think that probably just solidifies targets more for like Hazelwood and Woods.
Yeah. Ultimately, they could gear down pretty quickly and keep it on the ground. So I hope it sets it up for Hazelwood. I wanted to see him. And, of course, the injury. Yeah, love that guy. All right. Dirty Mike says, I need some cheap options. We'll try to find some. There's some value on the slate. Looking at the slate as a whole, as we take just a minor breather, did you see more of some guys hovering around the min that you could play, or was it more in the mid-range?
I think there's really good mid-range plays. Like Hazelwood's 4,500 on DraftKings, which is a really strong play. Like Malusi's 5K. Those are players I would like to get to a little more than some in price guys. Matt needs to take a nap in the chat. You are right, God's glory. You are right.
Yeah, the man never sleeps. We've been keeping him up with these. But he's just sad that Kansas almost lost last night to South Dakota. It's a safe space. You could say it. You boys.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of excited for Kansas. I wanted to see the changing of the guard with the Leopold era, who actually recruited pretty well. So I was hoping he could put some of that on the field. But
how'd that go?
Game 1, it's time for Kansas to improve.
Yeah, it was not good. All right, let's keep it going. One of the few teams that we have seen already, and maybe that helps us a little bit. Fresno State, This is a much different opponent. They're a 20-point dog going into Oregon, 64 total. Fresno was throwing at will so much that they stopped throwing in the second half. They pulled everyone out against UConn. This is not UConn. So let's start with the Bulldogs here. Clearly, it's going to be a different situation. What do you see? The guy I want to ask you about specifically is Ronnie Rivers, who is absolutely fantastic. Sub 7K on DraftKings. Where does he fall in the pecking order today?
He's a middling running back. I like him. It's kind of funny. You can play running backs as kind of like run backs and stacks, I think. And Ronnie Rivers, because he's so active in the pass game, he's somebody that you should keep an eye on in run backs for Oregon because he just catches so many balls. His target share is over 10%. Now, those aren't going to be like downfield throws, but they'll be high percentage catches, and he'll handle almost everything on the ground today. He just didn't have to against UConn.
Looking on the other side, we're talking a little before the show. Oregon, very solid team. We'll see next week what they're made of going into the shoe. But it's not the Oregon teams of old. They don't play particularly fast. Like in this matchup, Fresno State is by far the more prevalent tempo team. Anthony Brown's got this job solidified, the former BC player. He looked all right at times last year. What do you expect from him? He's got a vast, group of receivers to throw to, guys in the backfield, a lot of options for Oregon.
He's not a fantastic passer, middling by all accounts, but he's somewhat mobile, which keeps his projection pretty high on the ground. If he's asked to run, there is upside. It's just whether we see it in the game they're projected to win by, nearly 3 scores. So he's a dicey play, but he projects well mainly because of that rushing upside. But again, do they even need to use his dual threat ability, or can they just ride Verdell and Travis Dye? I think those are options that you could look to in tournaments. I like to target backfields that are a little cheaper, but have immense upside, where if one runner handles, maybe they split work evenly, but if one of them gets 3 touchdowns and the other one just doesn't get in the box, that has like GPP winning ceiling. And Oregon is implied for 42 points. It's another spot where you should take your shots. The receivers are pretty hard to get to. Johnny Johnson and Troy Franklin were listed as the 2 starters, and then they took Micah Pittman and listed him as a co-starter with Jalen Redd. And their leading receiver last year, Devin Williams, was listed as a 3rd stringer. Rip to him, but this does make some sense. Franklin is one of their best receiver recruits in recent memory. So seeing him at the minimum price on DraftKings, listed as a clear starter, no co-starter tag, he would be one of the min-price guys I'm interested in. But you mentioned it, Oregon just doesn't throw a lot, and Franklin completely unproven.
So you have minimal interest on the Fresno State passing attack just because this is not UConn, clearly.
If I take a Fresno State player, it's going to be in a run back in an Oregon stack, which I will have some because their team total is so high. Cropper has a huge target share. You could look to him. He's a little expensive, but I'm fine with Cropper. And he also gets a lot of rushing attempts, which is pretty nice for a floor. And then Josh Kelly, they listed Carrick Wheatfall and Ty Jones as co-starters in the first game. And then they just blew UConn out so badly that none of them played a lot. But Josh Kelly was on the field, the only other player outside of Cropper that wasn't listed with that co-starter designation.
Yeah, Kelly 3,300, another pay down option if you want to go there. Another game that spread feels about right. I'm not gonna mess around with this number. Healthy total though, as you mentioned.
It is a good total.
It is. I mean, I think this game could be somewhat competitive for a little while, but ultimately, Oregon going to get the job done. All right, Bama, Miami, neutral field, 19.5. It seems like a lot, but it is Alabama. 61.5 point total. First question everyone wants to know. We saw CJ Stroud. Okay, not bad. What do we see from Bryce Young?
He's completely unproven. He's only played a little bit. Stroud had like no career pass attempts. Bryce Young at least is a little bit. Bryce Young is more mobile than Stroud, which I think helps. And the thing with Bryce Young, and the same thing with Ohio State. Ohio State didn't take this approach, but Alabama can fall back on their run game if Bryce Young struggles early. And I kind of think that these teams should do this and ease their signal callers in. Bryce Young's not going to be playing with Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, so they have a very strong offensive line. They have a ton of returners in the backfield, including Brian Robinson, Jason McClellan, Trey Sanders. They've all been with the program for a while. If Young isn't the player they think he is, or they just want to ease him into action, I like the shots you can take on the run game here, with especially Brian Robinson at 6,500. Alabama implied from north of 40 points. It's another spot I like. Clearly Bama's expected to score and win pretty handily. Do you think that ultimately they just kind of wear them down on the ground, or do you look to the outside? You've got Mechie, you've got
I mean, a multitude of guys that can catch the ball there. Is it a team that is balanced, or are they going to be run heavy? I mean, it is Alabama. They can kind of do what they want.
Yeah, so new OC, they lose Sarkisian. I think they'll be run heavier to begin with. But then this team morphed their personnel a lot when Jalen Waddle got hurt last year and used a ton of 2 tight ends. It's because Slade Bolden isn't really like a dynamic playmaker. They use him a lot on special teams, and he was forced into starting action, at least partially, when they weren't in double tight end sets. He was listed as a co-starter with JoJo Early, who's a nice 4-star recruit. He beat out Aguie Hall for one of these co-starting jobs. So if you're playing a freshman, it's probably JoJo Early. The one player I'm really interested in, he's more of a prize play, is Jamison Williams, the former Ohio State player that just couldn't crack the field there because of Olave and Garrett Wilson. Jamison Williams was listed as a clear starter. He's a burner, and just not having that co-starter designation, I think, will be big here. Williams should play opposite Mechie in 2 wide sets, so that doesn't affect the 12 personnel if they use like 2 backs at any time. Williams should be on the field more than these co-players, Bolden and Early.
Not really relevant to the slate, but just out of curiosity, Jaleel Billingsley, is there word of why he's not the starter at tight end?
He wasn't the starter. Like, I don't think that matters. They use 2 tight ends a lot. Billingsley's their big move tight end. He's like Irv Smith. Like, they use Jaleel Billingsley as a kick returner. He's not a blocker. When he's on the field, it's in pure pass catching situations. He's like a hyper athlete. Cameron Latou is just going to be like your inline guy. Like, sometimes these depth charts don't really matter. You have to like know how these teams play. And Ohio State will use a lot of 2 tight ends, and Billingsley's going to be like the big slot and running routes when he's out there.
On the other side, questions in a different kind of regard with the quarterback, but very, very important. We're not doctors. If we were, even though I do have a stethoscope behind me, so maybe I should just give a bold take. Is D'Eriq King going to be healthy? Can he move? I mean, obviously, if Miami has any chance to exceed the 21-point implied total, they need D'Eriq King to be mobile.
They do. And that's a big ask considering he tore his ACL in December. I don't know. I can't imagine you rush him back if he's not ready to go. So I do think they need his mobility. Otherwise, they're kind of like a sitting duck. If I'm betting the game, it's on the Alabama side. The uncertainty of King has me weary of taking a side, but King is going to be viable, like even if you're running back somebody from like Alabama stacks, because King's really mobile. He's pretty good as a passer too, 64% completion percentage, 8.2 yards per attempt. I even think you could run something like D'Eriq King and a pass catcher with Brian Robinson on the other side, just King and the receivers playing catch up. Mike Harley is their most expensive receiver. He is like, if you remember Braxton Berrios at Miami, Mike Harley's like a carbon copy clone. All he does is run these little underneath routes out of the slot. So I'm more interested in Oklahoma transfer Charleston Rambo, who will be used a little more like valuable routes targeted down the field. Keyshawn Smith is a complete wild card, but they did list him as a starter over Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, who were the incumbents. This Miami team is pass heavy and they run a lot of plays. So even if like Alabama gets up and realizes this spread and they're 21-point favorites, Miami is going to be pushing the ball and trying to play from behind. So you have an opportunity to rack up like a lot of cheap catches in comeback situations, and King's mobility keeps him in play here.
Good old Charleston Rambo. Very interested to see him play. 4,300 does seem reasonable. I want to ask you just a quick 1v1 with Keyshawn Smith, because he's down there at the min. Would you rather go with him or Franklin from Oregon if you had to?
I would rather go with Franklin. We've seen a lot of like Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, and we've seen Miami rotate receivers in the past. Oregon has done that, but they've also committed to receivers at times too. They're both really risky, and that's kind of why I would rather not play a min-price receiver to begin with.
The backfield looks a little crowded. You got Cameron Harris, but there are other guys behind him. A, running against Bama is never a great idea. B, they're 20-point underdogs. So is this just a stay away spot in terms of the Miami backfield, or do you think they could have some success on the ground?
I will be ignoring the backs.
Okay. Well, that makes it easier. I'm thinking about, before we move on, putting a small wager, not my favorite, but I think I might lay the points, particularly in the first half. I have a feeling that Bama kind of comes out pretty crisp. I think they will be able to run the ball. Sitting like minus 10 and a half for the first half line, I think I might hit Bama.
We know our friend Bill O'Brien likes to run the ball, so he's the new OC. I like Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I forgot about him. Now maybe I won't bet it because I live dangerously back in Gus Malzahn I don't know if I want to back Bill O'Brien. Do we like Williams from Alabama or Hazelwood from Oklahoma?
I would go with Williams from Alabama.
I think he's
close,
definitely
though, really close.
Is close. I think Williams has the higher ceiling for sure, though.
I think Williams is the clear two for Alabama in a game with a tighter projected spread, but really similar totals overall. I think the pecking order at Oklahoma could have Mike Woods ahead of Hazelwood, and we know for sure Mims is ahead of him. Even like Stogner might be ahead of him. Oklahoma is more uncertain than the Alabama pecking order.
There's also a real chance that Oklahoma throws like 0 passes in the second half. If touchdowns break, if they're blocking punts, things could get out of hand. Oklahoma's going to be good on defense. They're no joke this year.
Oklahoma's fantastic on defense.
Yeah, people don't, it's not the Oklahomas of old. All right, we're about halfway through. I do have to mention this because it's ending today and it's a fantastic promo. As you guys know, me and Matt are so excited to unveil this college football DFS package. We're using a promo code of Tailgate. You're going to get $10 off your first week of the Awesemo Plus CFB package. It includes all the information you need, everything that me and Matt are referencing here, the player projections, the ownership projections, the matchup data, the usage, certainly the big time article. All you have to do, you can activate that promo code. You can click the link in this description of the video. It's good through today. So just do that. Sign on up. No reason not to. All right. Miami of Ohio weaseled onto this spread. Why? I don't know. 22.5-point underdogs. They're playing Cincinnati, who I think if there is a dark horse team from the clouds that can maybe get in the playoff conversation, it is them. We will see. It's a 49.5 total, though. That's not great. Is Miami of Ohio the Bowling Green X-out team of the week?
They're close.
Okay.
Their implied total is a little bit higher than Bowling Green's was, but like Brett Gabbert's the quarterback. You don't want to play him. I don't think you want to play any of his receivers. Like Jack Sorensen's the leader, but then a bunch of unproven guys and like Jalen Walker and Mac Hippenhammer, I think, are going to be the starters there. You're going to have to just play like super contrarian lineups to get to any of these Miami, Ohio guys. I think unless you're playing like the huge GPP, your best course of action is just Xing it out.
I see on a 13-game slate, I see unless you know to get the crystal ball. I don't see why you would be messing around with Miami of Ohio.
I don't even think they get to their implied team total.
Yeah, it could be bad. The more important data points that I want to ask you about is the other side, because Cincinnati is a very, very good team. But is this game environment not conducive to going to the guy like Desmond Ridder or Ford or any of these guys, Alec Pierce on the outside, Michael Young? There are players. It's just, is it a bad environment to target them?
I would probably avoid the pass game. They are already pretty run heavy and they're a slower pace team, definitely below average in pace. That makes me lean more towards the runners. And of course, Ritter's involved in the run game quite a bit. He rushed for 592 yards last year and scored 12 touchdowns. Like, really pissed me off because I had a lot of Jared Dokes in a ton of my lineups last year. And then you just had Ritter rushing in all the touchdowns. I think that was a bit of an outlier. Expect that to regress a little bit, which brings me to a player in Jerome Ford, who is middling in price. I'd say he's on the more expensive end, but he takes over for Dokes here. And Ford was really efficient last year, 483 yards on just 73 carries. He was way more efficient than Dokes overall. Caught 8 passes in a change of pace role, so he did display some 3-down ability, good pass catching there. Ford is a play I like based on their total, the spread, the competition coming from the MAC in Miami, Ohio. Charles McClellan may play a little bit here, and if they just absolutely beat down their opponent, we have seen Cincinnati go away from their lead runner, and that's when Ford was pretty productive last year. So McClellan may be in like big GPPs if this gets out of hand, but Ford is a pretty good play.
Yeah, I like Ford. Ritter's a guy that I think he's a very good player. I just don't love it. You're going to need to run hot with the wheels, and in a game like this, we may just not see that. I might short him. If you look on PrizePicks, he's one of those guys I kind of think under the totals today, not because he plays bad. It's just opportunity based. I could see Miami of Ohio. Honestly, they could be in the Old Dominion category of not scoring a lot of points at all. So quick question here. A couple I want to get to. Robinson from Bama or Hassan Haskins?
I think there's more upside with Robinson from Bama. Both are pretty good plays ultimately, though.
I think Haskins is more cash viable, but I agree with you.
We don't know the rotation in Bama, which
that's Haskins is going to get his. There's no doubt.
Haskins is for sure. Haskins is the proven commodity.
All right, one more. Goodson and Jamison Williams or Malusi and Mims? I
would go Goodson and Jamison Williams.
As would I. And how do we feel about 2 QBs and GPP? You got to do that. Always. Definitely do it. All right. Anything else here? Another game. Shocker. I have no interest in I'm not backing Miami of Ohio, and I'm not laying 22.5 in a 49.5 implied total of the game.
I'm not either. Okay. I'm not taking this game.
Actually, get this out of here.
I did take Cincinnati at a better line earlier in the week, but I don't want to take it now.
Okay. You get it under 3 touchdowns?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the move. Should have done that. That's why you want to listen to Betting You. It's things like that. And I'm on the show and I missed it. So you really need to pay attention.
I don't think we talked about that one.
Okay. Well, maybe it was you should have told me before the show. You got to give me these gems.
Maybe we did.
And then I don't
remember.
I can spin it as my own on this show because we got a lot of people in here. We have broken the record. Let's hit these likes. Let's get it over 100. That's not going to be hard, but appreciate it. Show the support. We still got 6 games left, but we're making good time. And like I said, today is officially the first week of college football in my book. I couldn't be more excited. I could be a little more excited, though, to talk about Marshall and Navy. This is bad. I don't know why this game is on the slate. 47 points. Yeah, this is just like, really? Why? It's a low total. It's a competitive game. All of this is due to Navy. As you guys know, they don't throw the ball. They run the triple option. Just talk about Marshall for a little bit. I mean, what do you expect out of Grant Wells? Or is it just a product of when you see the triple option, just run away from that in DFS?
Yeah, Wells is a pretty efficient passer. Marshall's already slow. Marshall's already run heavy. Like Grant Wells, efficient as he was, still only averaged 209 passing yards per game last year. And he was efficient. The issue is they're already slow and run heavy. Now you have Navy exacerbating those problems. And then you can't stack Wells. They listed 6 receivers as co-starters in the depth chart. Like Xavier Gaines is their best pass catcher. He's their tight end. And then on the other side, I'll just tell you why not to play Navy. The only time you consider Navy is if it's a small weekday slate. Playing their quarterback, Xavier Arlene, in your superflex, even though he is a quarterback, is the same thing as playing a low upside running back. Like you might as well play like Jerome Ford instead of Xavier Arlene. Like Arlene simply is just not going to throw.
Yeah, literally. Like he's not live for any throwing whatsoever. The 300-yard bonus would be the biggest upset in the history of mankind if anyone on Navy even approached half of that. They just run the ball. And in a close competitive game like this, you could see upwards of 8 or 9 minute drives. It just murders everything. 13-game slate. Throw this one out the window. I kind of lean to Navy in the betting market, but not one that's on the card yet.
I'm not taking this game.
Yeah, that's probably the prudent move. There's so many games today, and we're going to throw out some bets. There's a couple games that I really like that aren't on the DFS slate for betting, and we will get to those in a little bit in the show because I got to give some hot takes for the people. All right. Another Big Ten, all these conference games to start is an interesting kind of spin on the opening week. I kind of like it. Let me ask you, do you like that the Big Ten is opened with conference games?
Yeah, because like some of these games are non-competitive if you have normal non-conference games. So it's nice to have the rivalries in there. Like my favorite game earlier in the day is the Wisconsin Penn State game. For as much as I don't enjoy watching the Badgers, it's a good rivalry game.
No doubt. I mean, these are good games, and Indiana and Iowa is another one that's expected to be very, very competitive. You've got a 3.5 point spread. Over under is pretty low. No doubt about that. Indiana last year, credit to them, they were a very, very solid team. Penix gets hurt, but he's back. Freifrogel is still there. They do suffer some losses. But where does this Hoosier team stand basically offensively?
It's all going to ride with their signal caller. Penix tore his ACL last year, but he's back. He's like Derek King, only the injury happened a little bit earlier. How healthy is he? He's a really interesting quarterback to talk about because he was recruited as a dual threat, and then he just did not use his mobility whatsoever last year. He had just 25 rushing yards cumulative, so wasn't offsetting his sack numbers. And the biggest issue with Indiana was their offensive line. Penix was under pressure almost 40% of the time. So obviously contributed to the injury. They need to shore up this offensive line. And that was evident in their run game too, where you had Stevie Scott handling enormous volume, but just zero efficiency on the ground, completely dependent on touchdowns. Now, Penix is going to be a huge boon for guys like Ty Freifogel, Miles Marshall, even DJ Matthews, who's a notable name, a former Florida State player, a little small slot receiver. He'll be playing the WAP file year role vacated from last year, which is a high volume, low upside role because the targets all occur around the line of scrimmage. But Ty Freifogel is really the guy you want to stack with Penix if you're getting to this. The problem is Indiana's only implied for 3 touchdowns. So like you have the problems of Penix. How healthy is he? Does he run at all? Really efficient as a passer, but are they able to block for him? And then what does the efficiency look like in this low game environment? In the run game, they're replacing Stevie Scott, but they have incumbents Tim Baldwin, who will now be complemented by former USC transfer Stephen Carr, who is a former 5-star running back. But as you know, all these high-profile USC recruits had to transfer because they kind of cannibalized each other. I'm not really interested in the run game, but Penix and Freifogel may be in some stacks.
Yeah, I think Indiana is an interesting team for tournaments. The implied total doesn't make it super appealing, the price tags. It's just a tough matchup. Listen, Iowa's a good, solid team. They know what they're doing. I am interested to see what Carr does in the backfield, but I wouldn't go near them. I don't think they're cash viable, but maybe in some tournaments you could take some shots. If you do, where does Tyler Goodson fit in, on a run back or just as a standalone for Iowa?
Tyler Goodson's the best play in this game. He's one of the few locked in bell cows we have. There could be more bell cows, like Brian Robinson could be one. Ches Malusi could be one. They're just unproven. Goodson's locked in. He's proven it. He's a good pass catcher. He will be the guy handling most of the work here. Really good receiver out of the backfield. The issue is the total is really low. So you're going to have to fall back on Iowa being a run heavy team. Iowa's pretty middling in pace. So I think a little bit does have to go right for Goodson still, but at his price, he's a pretty solid play overall. And just for your reference, this Iowa pass game is not productive whatsoever. So on top of their run heavy nature, slow offense, Spencer Petras, I think he's the worst quarterback on the slate, including Brett Gabbert.
I swear to God, I was going to ask you that.
He might be worse than Brett Gabbert.
I was waiting for you to talk about Petras. It's a shame Bo Nix isn't on the slate so you could rank them, but yeah, don't play the Iowa.
Bo Nix is better because he can run.
That is true. Petras cannot run. Yeah, it's simple. Goodson is if Iowa wins the game, it's going to be Goodson. If Iowa loses the game, it's going to be no one. It's as simple as that. So
remember how much we didn't like Nate Stanley? I would give anything to have Nate Stanley quarterback this offense because they have good pieces everywhere else. Just
they do.
They are hamstrung by Petras.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not. That's going to be the detriment of Iowa this year. They're going to have to win with defense and running the ball. So again, really low total. That does hurt it. Competitive game, tough spread. I would lean Indiana with the points, but another one that did not make the card.
I'm not going to bet this because of the uncertainty around Penix.
Yeah, he's a wild card. We're going to see again that for tournaments, maybe, but I don't know how you trust with all the uncertainty. Here's a game I know that we are both going to bet. Why? Because we already bet it. West Virginia +3 at Maryland, 57.5. West Virginia is a team that we saw a lot. They seemingly are always on DFS slates, and some of it returns. Jared Doege is another guy who is not mobile. He doesn't do a ton. Letty Brown in the backfield. Talk to me about this Mountaineer team and what you expect today.
For DFS, they're really fast and really pass heavy, but Doege's not mobile. He's going to take negative yards. He has throughout his career. He averaged 258 passing yards per game. Because they're so pass heavy, they were 13th in pass rate, 20th in plays per game, and they have a defense that can't stop anybody. So that immediately is going to give him volume, but can he get enough volume to offset the sacks he's going to take? I think that's a really big question today because Maryland just reloaded their front seven. They had 5 incoming recruits, 4 stars or higher, 1 5-star in that group. To bolster a front 7 on defense, that was the weakness of their team. And now they have a bunch of high-profile recruits. Their strength was their pass defense, where they returned most of their production. So I'm a little worried about West Virginia's productivity. Their total is middling. I do like that they're the favorite here. And both of these teams will play fairly pass-heavy, fairly up-tempo. So I'm interested in some contrarian stacks. It's one of my favorite places to target for tournaments because I think the total is a little lower than what it should be. And I actually like the Maryland side of this outright. But on run backs, Letty Brown, he's another one of these guys at running back that has just straight up locked in volume. He can catch the ball. He's going to play on all 3 downs. He rushed for over 1,000 yards last year and just a horrifically inept offense. And he caught 31 passes, just referencing his pass catching skill set. But from there, you also have receivers at all price points that you could potentially use as run backs to Maryland stacks. Like Winston Wright's their leader. Bryce Ford Wheaton is their downfield burner. So if you're playing huge tournaments, Wheaton is the guy that will probably be the recipient of a potential long touchdown. Sam James and Sean Ryan are both cheap. They've both been in and out of the doghouse. James is actually their former leading receiver, but then he got benched last year, a lot of drops on the profile. So he's maybe a candidate to take a step back. But West Virginia, everything you'd like, you just wish they were a little more efficient.
I'm a Sam James truther. I think he's the best receiver they got. I hope he takes a step forward this year. He had flashes of it at times, and then he had flashes of it, him just sitting around on the bench when they played offense because it was bad at times. No Letty Brown, focal point. They do play fast, but you mentioned Maryland. You talked about this on the Betting You podcast. They recruit. They really do above their means. I don't know how they do it, but credit to their coach in that regard. Tagovailoa is back. Raheem Jarrett is back. This is a team, like many, that was ravaged by all sorts of issues last year. They look stable. They look dangerous. I'm with you. I think Maryland's going to win this game at home. So I assume that you're comfortable taking some shots in tournaments with a Maryland stack.
I am. Maryland had like one of the worst COVID outbreaks in the country last year. So they had like most of their starting lineup in and out of games at various points, lost a ton of production to just COVID absences. Tagovailoa was really good outside of the Northwestern game, hit at least 240 passing yards in all of his next 3 games. Pretty decent dual threat ability too. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he's going to give you positive yards. And then very easy stacking options. Dante Demas had a 30% target share last year. I think that comes down a little bit with Raheem Jarrett, hopefully not missing games because of COVID or injury, but Raheem Jarrett did miss some games. When he was healthy, he was very much the 5-star receiver we were expecting him to be. So Raheem Jarrett, a strong breakout candidate within the offense. Tagovailoa is really cheap. I think he doesn't quite project as well as some other quarterbacks on the slate. But again, I think this is a spot where the total could go over. And we like how each offense plays. Like Maryland's fast and they're pass heavy. West Virginia's fast and they're pass heavy. So that gives you volume for the pass catchers and the quarterbacks. And it gives you potential for this to go over the total at maybe less ownership. So it's a spot I've kind of isolated where I like stacks. I'm comfortable with Demas and Jarrett. Even Jayshon Jones and Daryl Jones are super cheap. They'll rotate in that third receiver spot. But in contrarian builds, I think you can get there. And again, I think this Maryland stack will already be kind of contrarian to begin with.
Yeah, it's a game that doesn't stand out if you're just looking at totals. I'm with you. Last question: Raheem Jarrett cash viable? Question.
Let me look at his projection quick. He wasn't in my cash lineup, just for your reference. But if he's viable or not, I will find that out for you. There's a ton of players on the
while
slate.
You're looking at that, shout out to Greg Beans with the super chat. Just sending the well wishes to you and me. We appreciate that. We need the good vibes here. We're going to take down some tournaments, take down some betting slips. And
I would probably not play him in cash.
Okay, fair enough. He is a good tournament target, though.
He's like on the brink of cash viability, but I would rather go other places.
Okay, fair enough. 3 games left. Louisiana Tech plus 23 going into Starkville, 53-point total. Hot take. I think Louisiana State's going to keep it close. I kind of like this team. I like Austin Kendall. They get him at quarterback to solidify it. What do you see, though, on the DFS side? Low implied team total. It's kind of hard to get to them.
Yeah, really low implied team total. I think the most positive thing you can say about it, Louisiana Tech, pretty good pass rate. It's 25th in the country from last year. Plays per game above average. So if you're running a Mississippi State stack, I'm comfortable running it back with a player on Louisiana Tech. I don't want Kendall. He's not mobile. He lost the starting job to Jarrett Deggy at West Virginia. Yikes. But maybe looking at a pass catcher in a run back is how I would try to get to this offense. They're all really cheap. So like Smoke Harris is their leader, 4,900 for him. They're going to run 4 wide receiver sets. You could look to Isaiah Graham, 3,700. Trey Harris is the min. Griffin Herbert's 4K. If you play a lot of Mississippi State stacks, I would try to probably look at a run back.
Yeah, I like this as a better bet than target for DFS. On the other side, you mentioned Mississippi State. What can we say? They're a whole new team now with, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And we know that the last time we saw them, they were in a melee in a bowl game. What do you see out of this team? Do they pick up the pieces from that? Do you want to target them in some stacks?
That was Malik Heath, right? He's back.
Yes, he is back. He should be well rested after that.
Yeah. So Mississippi State, obviously you want to take shots with them. Their team total is really good here too. And they pass at the highest rate in the country. Unfortunately, I don't think Will Rogers has job security. He was benched at times last year, and you're not going to get honesty out of Mike Leach. And we'll talk about that with the receivers. He is not your most honest and forthright coach in college football. But because Will Rogers is expected to start, he has to be at least viable in tournaments because he's going to pass so much. Like last year, he was just backdooring 300-yard bonuses because he was throwing the ball so much with little to no efficiency, but the volume would just get him there. That also plays into his receivers where you have Malik Heath, the aforementioned. Mekhi Polk's a transfer from Cal. Austin Williams was second on the team in receiving last year. Jameer Calvin is a transfer from Washington State who has familiarity with Leach from his days over there. And interestingly, they listed their leading receiver last year, Jaden Wally, as a backup. This is why I don't believe a lot of what Mike Leach says. However, he has in the past like mixed and matched his receivers. And 1 week, like Wally will be the leading receiver. The next week, he'll play 30% of the snaps. So like Leach is going to be volatile no matter what, unless he has like an alpha emerge, which we just didn't see last year. If I was picking one, it would be Jameer Calvin, who had a 30% target share in a limited sample with Leach at Washington State. So I think there's like a clear affinity for Leach liking this dude and keeping him on the field. And he's very affordable in price at 4,800. He would be where I look.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you throw this much, you know the volume's going to be there. But as we've seen in the past with Wazoo and here, it can be a little difficult to decipher. Closer, I'm going to steal a little leak for, so closer than the experts think here. All right. This one probably not closer than the experts think. Northern Iowa, 31.5-point dogs at Iowa State, total of 50. I'm going to ask again, Bowling Green tag on Northern Iowa. Are they irrelevant?
I didn't even write them up on the slate.
Slacker.
I wrote this. All these players are egregiously poor places at their price. DFS players should receive salary in order to put one of them in their lineup.
Yes, the old rebate. The lesser
they're applied for 2.5 points.
Well, a couple safeties could turn the whole tide. All right, the only question I really have for you, Breece Hall is amongst the highest owned players on the slate. He's $9,000 on DraftKings. Even in a blowout, is he someone that you put in cash and in tournaments? Where do you fall with one of the best running backs in the country?
Yeah, he's certainly viable in tournaments. I go back and forth on these players in cash because they're so volatile. Like he has immense upside, even on like 6 carries. You could get the Zach Charbonnet effect where he just runs for like 130 yards and 3 scores. You could also have him in there on like the first series and then you don't see him again.
That's all. I have no. Do we have anything to talk about? Hutchinson, Purdy. What do you want to do with these guys before we get to the last game?
Maybe in like tournaments, but like they're not going to throw a lot. So
no,
not really interested.
All right, last game. Then we're going to give some betting picks. We're going to get out of here. But stay tuned right after MMA. It's an afternoon slate. Pete the Heat, Jason Floyd. They got you covered here at Awesemo. That is what we do. Anything that's going on, we got you covered. Louisiana, Lafayette, +9, going into Texas, 58-point total. This is a real game. If you're not a super college football fan, you may not know Louisiana is no joke. They beat Iowa State early last year. The slander you're going to hear from Matt, you can disregard that. He thinks it was all a fluke because they did win about 10 games by like 1 point last year. But I like the Raging Cajuns. I know that you think that Texas might handle them. Talk to me. I want to start with Texas, actually. Talk to me about Hudson Card because he won this job. He's extremely athletic. Is this a guy that you think can right out of the bat produce?
He has like a really good skill set. Whether he's efficient or not, we will find out. But Card, former 4-star, really athletic dual threat. Like, I don't want to call him like Lamar Jackson, but he has like rushing upside like that. We haven't seen it yet, obviously, but the dude was clocked at a 4.5 40-yard dash. So the like upside with him on the ground is tantalizing. Like I don't want to say he's like Kyler Murray as a prospect, but he could score like Kyler Murray. Like a player he reminds me of is like a Bryce Perkins, who obviously wasn't as efficient as those guys, but has like that kind of rushing upside. So Card has that. And then he's playing for a team on Texas implied for 34 points. It's really good. He's playing for Steve Sarkisian, who is quite pass heavy, quite up tempo, and very efficient with his offense. Card is one of my favorite GPP plays on the board for that reason.
What does this do to Bijan Robinson, who he averaged over 8 yards a carry? He runs wild at times. Does Card's athleticism hurt him enough, or is he just also in play in different lineups?
He's also in play, in my opinion. I don't know if I want to play them together, but at the same time, Robinson's a good pass catcher. So they're like, I think you could do like full Texas game stacks. Usually my rule to include running backs in the full stack is having a 40-point total. They don't quite have that, but it's close enough to maybe think about it.
Anyone on the outside, if you go Card because he's so athletic, are you content with maybe just running him alone a la Lamar Jackson at times?
I would rather stack him. I still think to realize like tournament winning upside, you need to stack. Plus Texas really, really pass heavy, and like Sark has been pass heavy too. So having Card stacked with Joshua Moore at 6K or Jordan Whittington, their slot makes the most sense to me. The third starter listed was Xavier Worthy, who's 4,700. I would rather just find the 300 to get to Whittington, who's a proven commodity in the slot, rather than like take an unproven Xavier Worthy. But in tournaments, Worthy for the exact same reason should be considered.
On the other side, You got Levi Lewis. You've got a team that is a quality team. Chris Smith in the backfield, LeBlanc on the outside, kind of the deep threat. But it's not the easiest spot in the world. I do think Texas is an improved team. I think it's going to be close. I just don't love them for DFS. What do you see for Louisiana in terms of targets?
Levi Lewis is a decent dual threat. So he's somebody you could consider an outside option in tournaments, but like Card is cheaper. I would rather just put most of the middling quarterbacks we talked about. I would rather just take a stab on Card. But
yeah, I agree.
Peter LeBlanc is their leading receiver. They don't throw a ton. They're not they're pretty middling to below average in pass rate. Same thing with plays per game. Texas probably paces them up a little bit, but outside of LeBlanc, they run nasty timeshare, 5 receivers rotating in and out. Their backfield is significantly narrowed from last year. Just Chris Smith is back. I think he'll handle most of the work, and he's a pretty good pass catcher. He would be my favorite player on Louisiana.
Yeah, we saw they had a two-headed monster. Certainly, guys, Elijah Mitchell, my guy in the NFL now. So I think it's going to be a competitive game. For this slate, though, 13 of them, not the best. I'm really interested to see Card. This is a situation, too. We talk about this a lot. If you believe, you got to buy now, because if he goes wild, they play Arkansas next week, the price is going to adjust quickly. The masses are going to get on him. Right now, he's an unknown. So if you think that Hudson Card is the type of guy who's live for double bonuses, things of that nature, the time to hit him is in this slate right now.
That game next week's going to have a big total.
That game is going to be nuts. And it leads me into a couple of things before we get out of here. A couple games not on the slate that I want to just talk about briefly for the betting side. Arkansas minus 19.5. I think they smoke Rice today. That is one of my favorite bets. I believe you are we're on LSU, are we not?
I bet LSU. I bet Arkansas both. Those are good bets for me. Things off the slate that I have. Let me try to. I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, I'm pretty clear. I'm going to end up betting Clemson because it's at 2.5.
I have Texas Tech.
Texas Tech against
That's
Houston?
On the FanDuel slate.
Okay. That could be a wild game. I'm going to bet Clemson.
I have Georgia, but I bet it in June.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's I don't understand the spread. That's one I didn't even want to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm with you there. I'm going to end up jumping on Michigan, and I've only got 2 minutes to do that. So I'm going to do that as we speak. A couple of just quick questions before we bounce out of here. Favorite, if you had to just pick one in terms of a quarterback, price irrelevant, who's the guy you feel most confident in?
I actually want to take it a different way. The guy I'm most interested in is Hudson Card, and it's because I'm not confident in him. So I think relative to his upside, people will not play him enough today.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. I see exactly what you're saying. And that's something that we try to preach on this show, because the obvious spots, the ownership comes with them, and you can really take advantage in college with what you do there. I'm with you with Card. I have no problem with that. I think in the backfield, I do expect Haskins to have a pretty good day. Certainly Goodson, guys like that. Just got to find those receivers on the outside. No doubt about it. For me, I'm more on the betting side of things, as you guys know. Arkansas, that's going to really determine my fate today. Maybe Bama, LSU, I'm with you. Maryland on the money line. Think they win the game. You did a lot of good work here. You feeling good? I know you're burning it at both ends. You can rest up because you got Notre Dame in a couple of days on an ISO slate against FSU.
Yeah,
Feel
tomorrow. Good? One of my good college friends decided to have his wedding during the Notre Dame game, so I'm not happy.
That is disappointing, but
can you imagine having your wedding in fall?
Yeah, there's just no excuse for that. That is a really poor decision, but you know what? We have done it. 13 up, 13 down. I want to say thanks again to PrizePicks. Get on over there. It's not too late. Awesemo CFB, and obviously get inside the ropes. We have so much coming on here with CFB, and NFL starts next week. I know you guys don't want to miss it, but good luck today. We really hope that chat kills it. If you have any questions, you can hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Slack. Same time next week. Anytime there's college football, you got me and Matt here at awesemo.com. Good luck, and we'll talk to you guys soon.